What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Aftersound here, bringing you some Genesis League content today, specifically Genesis League goals. We also stream right here every Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday morning, so come by and say hello. All right, well, we had our first Town Hall of 2023 for GLS, the platform, Genesis League Sports, and obviously the game that they are working on under that umbrella right now is Goals. So Genesis League Goals is what we will be talking about today and the development of that game. Now, there's been obviously back in November, there was massive layoffs with the company, and it looks like there was some personnel changes around that time. But the game very much is still in development, and now we have a rough idea of what to expect and hopefully when to expect it. Again, a lot of these dates are fuzzy. A lot of the things that are being worked on still haven't even been decided yet. But there is a rough date for the important things, which we'll get into in a moment. So if you're new to this channel, if you're new to this format, I've done it for previous Genesis League town halls, but I do the same thing for Splinterlands. This is not a summary. This is just the 5 things that kind of stuck out to me. I don't know actually if there are any content creators that are doing full-on summaries of this. Maybe NFT Gaming Collectibles. So you maybe want to check them out and show them some love on their channel. But for me, this is just the 5 biggest things that stood out, and so I'm going to dive in now. Here, this is the cheat sheet, the visual for myself and for you guys to see what we'll be talking about. But we'll actually start not with the roadmap. We're going to go back to that in a moment, but the big one, and that is the game is planning to launch in Q2, and there is hopefully going to be a beta that will be launched in April. So we are a couple months away from that, hopefully about 2.5 to 3 months or so from that April beta launch, depending on when in April it comes in. And if you saw my last video on Genesis League, where I was talking about talked about the update for the pre-sale 1, pre-sale 2, and the dates for that, it seems as though the general sale will start roughly in May. I believe pre-sale 2 is going to go up until May, the first week of May 3rd, if I remember correctly, but don't hold me to it. I just remember it's the early part of May, and then a week after that is when the general sale would begin. Now, I kind of figured at that point that, they're not going to launch the game necessarily before the general sale begins, so that May launch date is kind of still in play. Obviously, Q2 does also include June, so we could see this get pushed out to June. And I'll be honest, with the amount of uncertainty that was expressed by the team on a lot of things that still need to be figured out, I wouldn't be surprised if we get a little bit later than we were expecting. But it is in play, and that's not me throwing shade. That's just trying to level set expectations here for myself on when we can expect this. And I have to say, guys, I am really excited for this game. I don't know what it is, but whenever Genesis League Goals got announced last year, I think like August or so, I started following MLS a little bit more. Obviously, the World Cup. I watched the World Cup religiously, even though I don't care about soccer/football. But I am starting to care more now, and I am excited to see what this game could offer because the gameplay does look pretty cool, and we're going to get into that in a little bit. So let's go over to number 2 now and actually do a little bit of a roadmap deep dive. I don't need to do a separate video on this because there's not too much on there. So we're going to skip this whole first column of everything that they have live, but we'll focus on Q1, Q2, and then obviously into the future. But as you can see here, within Q1, they want to get GLUSD minting and integrate that within Q1. They are also working on getting the NFT tokenomics right. They want to get the artwork done. I know they were trying to shoot for pack openings by sometime in February or March. Again, they didn't say that in this town hall, but they've said that previously. And if you're following the MLS, I believe the season begins end of February or early March. Again, I'll have to confirm that. But Q1 is going to be a time where hopefully we'll be able to at least open packs, see what's in there, and start getting excited about all of that. Mint integration, marketplace integration, GLUSD integration, white paper 2.0. So there's a lot that they're working on in Q1. So I would say most of this stuff, and I'm not even going to pay attention to the percentages. Most of this stuff is just what do we need to get in order to have a launchable game by Q2, right? If you want a beta by April, which is the first month in Q2, then they're just knocking everything out that they can. And it sounds like they've made several concessions, which we'll get into in the gameplay section in a moment. But that will all be coming in or all be developed and worked on in Q1. And so if we move into Q2, again, this is what they're talking about in terms of a game launch, but it looks like they're going to have everything done by that time: game release white paper, game design, UI, rulebook. They'll have the game engine and integration website running, QA testing, all that fun stuff. So it's a basic roadmap. There's not too much on there outside of like, oh, we want this game and we're hoping that we can get it. But the idea is we want this game, or we want everything associated with it. So we want a functioning. What we want is a functioning game. We want to be able to start earning within the game. We want to be able to buy cards, open packs, assets, trade. And one thing that I wanted to point to here is rental markets. This is not on the roadmap for Q1 and Q2. So if you want to get into the game, so let's actually go into the future part here. If you want to get into the game, then you may need to buy your cards off the market if you haven't bought packs. So you might actually need to go and buy packs, buy cards. The rental market that makes Splinterlands so the Splinterlands economy so fascinating, so fun, will not be there at the live at the launch of the game, I should say. At least according to this the roadmap, it doesn't seem that way. So, I don't own any packs right now. I was planning to buy cards separately. Maybe I'll grab a couple and at the end of pre-sale one. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. But I do think that it's going to be important. It's going to be interesting at the beginning. Let me just put it that way. It's going to be very interesting at the beginning because people won't be able to just go in and rent cards. You'll have to go in, and it's like, if you want to play, you got to buy the cards, and you got to buy them off whatever the market determines. And I know a good amount of packs have been bought so far for this early or first edition. I don't know what they're going to be selling for. The market, is going to be in price discovery for probably quite a while before people figure out what are the good cards, what are the great cards, what are the cards that you don't really need, right? So again, it makes it a little bit more appealing to buy packs. Again, you're rolling the dice there, but if you follow any of these projects, right, Splinterlands, Genesis League, and I'm sure many others, the hype and FOMO at the beginning when this stuff first comes out, you're going to pay a premium. So it's either you pay a premium on the cards or you pay to roll the dice. And so I guess that's what it's going to come down to, because there won't be a chance to rent cards right off the bat, at least not according to the roadmap. But I would assume that is something that is going to come relatively quickly. And while it's not listed here, I would hope that would be on the priority list for Q3 or as soon as the game is actually launched. They also have tournaments and guilds in there, which I think is great. I think people will have a fun time just learning the ranked play and how that all goes, but adding some type of tournaments section in there, as well as, I don't know why they're calling them guilds. They should call them like clubs or something, or I don't know, associations. Like if you're excuse me, banding together with a bunch of other teams, right? Or franchises, I think is what the term that they're going to use. Guilds just doesn't make sense to me, but it is what it is, and it does help to bridge the gap for many of the Splinterlands players or players coming from other games that have guilds to understand what exactly that means. So that is the roadmap. Pretty simple. I mean, it's not simple. It's simple for us to read, but it's not necessarily the thing. So let me see here. I know my webcam has totally frozen, so we're going to try and see if I can get it back up and running. Boom. All right, cool. And I don't even want to bother editing this video, so hopefully you guys weren't even looking at my face. Okay, number 3. There's a couple of things here. So we actually got a small gameplay demo, and you can go in and watch it. I should try and get the timestamp from the actual town hall. Now, here's the thing. It looks like it's written in MS-DOS, right? It's just text-based. It looks like it's a game from the 1980s, but it's very simple, and it shows you the most important thing, in my opinion, is that this is going to be an actively played game. It is not an auto battler in the sense where you pick your team, you send them in, or you pick your team, pick your lineup, send it in, and then, the rest of the game's up to RNG. There are going to be turns that last 5 seconds each, and I believe there's 30 turns per game where you'll be trying to move the ball down the field, right? And the way that they've set this up is they're going to start with a 7v7 version of this, which if you're familiar with soccer or football, it's usually 11 players versus 11 players. But we are going to be doing 7 versus 7. It looks like the way they had it set up, it's like 2 forwards, 2 midfielders, 2 defense, and then a goalie to comprise of your team. And in that way, you are, the ball is going to be at a certain place. In fact, you know what? I want to, all right, so here's what the cards look like. And they were trying to do a little A/B testing here for the group, but just so that you have something, a visual to follow along with. I think they posted, here you go. So this is what it looks like. And again, this is a very simple concept. There's no flash to it. There's nothing, but it's just to show how the game logic is going to work. So if you have the ball, for example, let's say the ball is at midfield, you can like choose to dribble the ball forward and see if you can make it past this guy. There's his defense stats, right, where it'll show like his block stats or his interception stats. There's a bunch of things and a bunch of different stats, abilities, whatever that you want to call them, for each player. And there's a little RNG placed in there as well. But you can try to dribble past them. You can try to pass to someone ahead, right? So if the ball is with your midfielder right now, you can pass it to your forward, or you can switch it, meaning that you pass it to an adjacent person, so your other midfielder here. Or you can shoot it, and that's only if it's between. Basically, you can shoot from anywhere on the field, kind of like an NBA Jam style thing. But obviously, if you're going to shoot it from there, you have to like make it past every single defender. And obviously, the chances of you actually scoring are going to be very slim based on whatever your shooting stat is versus everybody's defense, right? You're going to have to go past the forwards, you're going to have to go past the midfielders, the defense, and then the goalie. So if there's nobody, if it's just you and the goalie, that's probably the best chance you have of making it. And I don't even know if you can go past the goalie. That'd be interesting if you could dribble it past the goalie and then pretty much be guaranteed to make a shot. But that's kind of how it's going to work. It's going to be very, very active, at least from my perspective and what I'm seeing here, where you're just going to be going back and forth. It's just like, boom, you try to move forward, you pass it. It either gets blocked or it gets intercepted. If it doesn't, then it goes to your guy. But if it does get blocked or intercepted, then all of a sudden the other team has the ball and they start moving, right? And so you can see here, turns left. I believe every time you choose something and your opponent chooses something, the turns start to go down. So these are supposed to be 5-minute games or less. Like they're supposed to be just very quick, but it doesn't seem like an auto battler. Now, I don't want to get into this here, but I know that it's inevitably going to be asked, so I just want to address it head on. Can this game be bottable? Well, first of all, I'm not the person to be asking that, but it was the first thing that I thought about, where I'm just like, well, every situation is going to be so different and unique. Could it be bottable? I mean, I'm sure it could be, right? Because you can create any kind of AI to like play a game in a certain way. But I actually wonder how difficult this is going to be. So if there are any botters out there in the community that actively, sorry, not botters, but like designers or programmers, I'm curious to know, compared to something like Splinterlands, how much more difficult with this style of gameplay that is much more dynamic, much more active, where you're doing like 30 different, turns, or 30 different, not transactions, but actions, I guess we can call them, per game. That's got to be much more difficult. Although at the end of the day, a lot of it just comes down to stats, right? It's just like, if you put a bot in my seat and the bot is just going to make the most optimized decision, maybe that's actually the easiest way to go about it. Maybe it's actually even easier, because it's just like the bot knows based on what's ahead of it, it can make the decision. I don't know. So I don't know what the bottableness of this game will be, but considering how prevalent botting is in the Splinterlands ecosystem, I wouldn't be surprised if people try and or succeed within Genesis League. But we'll save that for a future video when I can get somebody much more qualified to talk about bots, at least their perspective on that. Okay, so 7v7, this is what it is to start with. They do eventually want to work towards that full 11 versus 11, but the teams have been using this MVP approach, minimum viable product, so they just want to get something out. And so starting with 7-on-7 makes sense. You're going to have 7 players, 5 subs, and 10 reserves to comprise of a team. So a total of 22 players. And so what'll be cool is that if they do end up increasing the amount of players in a game, then it would just be like, 11 players and only 6 reserves. And so in a game, for example, you would have your 7 players, your 5 subs that are active for the game, but then your 10 reserves are not playing or not playable in that specific game. Okay. And so what you can do though is they are still part of the team. They still like build up the synergy. And I don't fully understand how synergy works, although I know that as you play more and more with the same team, there is, it improves over time, and that, does something better for their stats or gives them buffs. Coming back to this, there are actually let's drop down here. So there are going to be 577 player cards, which is an absurd amount, but it makes sense because that's how many players are in the league. And actually, I think there's more players in the league, but they said that they cut it off at 577 players. And there's going to be 40 coach cards. And what they said about the coach cards is that they wanted to do formations and so much more with coaches. I think, for those Splinterlands folks out there, think summoners, right? They wanted to have a lot more for what the coaches could offer. But at this point in time, they're just going to keep it to stat buffs or potentially like debuffs for now. Again, MVP. So the other thing too, which is really cool, is that it seems as though the ECR is going to be at the card level. There are going to be health and stamina stats for your players. And so I think if they get too low or to a certain point, at that moment or at that point, like they won't be worth playing because they'll just suck at the game, right? Imagine like somebody who hasn't slept in like 5 days trying to play like competitive basketball or something, or I don't know why I said basketball, competitive soccer, right? They would just be essentially ineffective. So I think that's how they're going to try and tackle the ECR, which again is an interesting approach, similar to how they're planning to do for tower defense. It's going to be at the card level, not at the account level. Now, with teams, though, you can create a team, and this is a concept that I'm starting to wrap my head around a little bit more, but it's very different from Splinterlands. And so people come from Splinterlands. The way that I can explain it is that you create your team, and you can have several different teams. So when you look at this, it's not like, when I think about Splinterlands, I think about the fact that like I want to have an own or rent, basically have access to every single card, so that whenever I play a game, I create my team for that game. Well, you're not creating a team for a game. You are creating a team to work together for games in the future, right? So essentially, like you're going to try and create a bunch of teams. Not a bunch of teams, but at least one team that you can use with several different players, up to 22 different players, at which point you go out and you just start playing games. And there's this whole synergy effect where the more these players, and when I say players, specifically the cards you own, right, the individual NFT cards, the more they play together, the more synergistic they become. There's an element there that isn't fully defined yet, but you will create this team and then you just go out and play, right? And what you can do is that for the 7 players you have on the field, you can pick different subs. If it's so when you start a game, for example, right? For those who are familiar with Splinterlands, there's a rule set. So maybe the rule set will say something like, weather is this, or, I don't know, such and such players, or like opponent's defense is such and such, right? Like, I don't know how exactly it'll be, but you can then choose to mix and match your reserves. So essentially what it comes down to is like every time you're starting a game, you have these 22 cards that you can choose. And granted, most of the time you'll have like 7 players that are your starters. You'll have some subs, you'll have some reserves. But over time, as you get access to other cards, or if you want to build or shift things around in your team, you can change some of the players in there, because it's just like, well, let me go grab this person, or there's a new card out, or whatever the case is. Like you can go and do that with your team, but over time, you want to be building this team together so that it can be more cohesive, if that makes sense. And the other thing, too, is that you'll be able to have multiple teams. Now, the other way that they want to curb ECR is by limiting the amount of teams that you have, but they didn't talk much about that outside of saying that they're still exploring how many teams should an account have. And so, again, we'll get more information on that. But the gameplay, again, looks interesting. I'm excited about it just because I nerd out on this stuff. I think it'll be fun. The meta will be cool and interesting. I love sports in general. And I've definitely come to have an appreciation for the sport of soccer/football. So I think it'll be fun, especially somebody who loves or enjoys the gameplay of something like Splinterlands, to have a different aspect of it within a different context, a different sport, but still feel very kind of card gamey, if that makes sense. So I'm excited about it. The gameplay looks cool. Obviously, it's very rudimentary right now, but the active nature of it seems exciting. And again, if it's just 30 turns and these turns are lasting like up to 5 seconds each or something like that, that's actually not very long. That's what, 2.5 minutes? Yeah, I mean that's pretty good. that's pretty good. So let's move on to number 4, which is GLGT trading is potentially coming in February. I don't know. I should put like a little asterisk there, just so nobody screenshots me. So nobody wanted to commit to this, but Aggie was at least trying to be confident in the fact that they want GLGT to be trading or tradable in February. Now, why is this important? Well, because on January 24th, the pre-sale 1 ends, and a week later, which I believe is January 31st, or we'll just say like February 1st, essentially, Presale 2 is going to begin, and the fundamental difference between Presale 1 and Presale 2 is that packs in Presale 2 will not only be $5, but you will actually need to use a GLGT similar to a Splinterlands voucher in order to purchase a pack. Now, you know what? Actually, let me rephrase that. You will not need it, but it will give you a $5 discount. The packs will be $10. And the GLGT will give you a $5 discount on it. So pretty much you need it unless you just don't care about money. But I'm hopeful that we get it then, because what Aggie was saying is that if they don't have it ready by that time, it's probably easier for them to just push everything back. And I'm like, oh no, let's not push everything back, right? We don't need to do that. But obviously, if presale 2 begins and the whole aspect of presale 2 is you need to have GL, you don't need to, but it's good for you to have GLGT in order to buy packs. Well, then, if you can't trade it and you can't buy it, it's going to actually deter a lot of people from spending. So this is very much within the team's, the team should have an incentive to get this out as quickly as possible. So hopefully February seems like the time in which that will be the case. But I don't know when we will get other updates, and I don't know how often we're going to have town halls for GLG, but hopefully we'll get something in February. Okay, and lastly, this was talked about in terms of like rewards. So when you play, I'm assuming there's going to be some kind of daily quest, daily focus, similar to what's in Splinterlands, something to work towards on a daily and probably seasonal basis. What are the rewards that you can get? Well, I'm sure they'll be paying out GLX, because GLX is going to be the reward token as well. It's the governance token and will be the reward token for the game. But also there are going to be NFT reward cards. Now, we don't know, and they didn't clarify there if there was going to be soulbound or non-soulbound. And this conversation is happening very currently in Splinterlands right now as we're making this switch to soulbound cards at the end of the month. So if it is soulbound cards, what essentially is going to be its skills and abilities. So it's going to enhance your gameplay. It won't, you won't get any players or special things or special players or player cards or coaches. It'll just be skills and abilities that you can use to enhance your team. Now, Aggie mentioned something about consumables being a thing where it could potentially be like a one and done, but then he also kind of disclaimed that by saying he doesn't want it to be a pay to win so again, we don't know much. And, again, this is what I'm saying. This is not me saying that we don't know much. This is the team saying we haven't figured it out yet. It's still being discussed. So yes, we don't know much because of that, but it does sound like at this point in time, there are going to be some type of NFT reward cards, which if it is going to be the soulbound thing, and I can, at the end of the day, stake GLUSD to unlock it and then have it be tradable, maybe, halfway through its print rate or when its print rate is done, who knows how that'll all work. I'm good with that. But even if it ends up being soulbound forever, it's still cool too. Like I don't know what to expect with this game, and I'm trying to go in with as open of a mind as possible, because for me, it's not about the earnings. It's just about the fun, right? But we'll see just how quote unquote profitable the game will be when it actually does come out. So that is the 5 things. There is a bonus thing. They did mention nodes, or at least somebody asked about nodes, and Aggie said that they want to get the game first. They want to get the game out first, and they'll focus on nodes later. But the interesting thing that he said is, when it comes to nodes, they're thinking through this, and licenses and wanting to get all of that set up. He's like, it's not going to happen in weeks, but maybe in months, which gives me a little confidence that maybe we'll see it sometime this year. because I really didn't know what to expect until the town hall. So again, Q3 and Q4 are not even on the roadmap. So it sounds like they are very much heads down, focused on getting the game out, and then they will see where they are at come Q2 with the game launch and what they can try to deliver over the second half of the year. But I don't know, guys. I'm excited. I'm curious to get your thoughts on this. If you watched the town hall, what did you think overall? If you didn't watch the town hall, definitely curious to get your thoughts on, I guess, my presentation overall, and how if this is something that you're expecting or not expecting. But ultimately, like I said, I'm excited for it. We will have to wait a couple of months, so I'm going to keep that excitement on the back burner just because, I can't do anything about it for now outside of buying packs, which I'm still hesitant to do because I may want to roll the dice and just buy the premium cards when they come out. But we'll see how that all plays out. Maybe we'll grab a couple here or there. That's all I have for you. Have an amazing rest of your day. I'll catch you all in the next video and see you around the game. Take care.